1513, Niccolò Machiavelli penned The Prince, a treatise that dissected the mechanics of power, leadership, and statecraft. Centuries later, the political landscape has evolved, yet the essence of power remains strikingly similar. Enter Donald Trump, a figure whose ascent and governance echo the very principles Machiavelli outlined. Trump's rise wasn't a mere political anomaly. It was a calculated maneuver that leveraged media, public sentiment, and the art of perception. His approach to leadership, characterized by boldness, unpredictability, and a relentless focus on dominance, mirrors the Machiavellian archetype of a ruler who prioritizes effectiveness over morality. This video delves into the parallels between Trump's political journey and Machiavelli's doctrines. We'll explore how Trump's strategies align with the Machiavellian blueprint, examining the tactics he employed to acquire, maintain, and exercise power. Machiavelli distinguishes between two primary avenues through which a prince can acquire power: fortune, luck or external circumstances, and virtù, personal prowess or skill. He posits that while fortune can grant power, it is prowess that sustains it. Trump's fortuitous entry. Donald Trump's initial prominence stemmed from his real estate ventures and media presence. His fame from The Apprentice and his reputation as a successful businessman provided a platform that many politicians lack. This celebrity status was his fortune, an external factor that facilitated his entry into politics. Harnessing prowess. However, Trump's transition from a businessman to the President of the United States wasn't solely due to his fame. He demonstrated virtù by capitalizing on public discontent, positioning himself as an outsider who could challenge the establishment. His unorthodox campaign strategies, direct communication style, and ability to galvanize a base showcased his political acumen. Machiavelli emphasizes that new princes must be willing to act decisively, sometimes ruthlessly, to secure their position. Trump's aggressive rhetoric, policy decisions, and dismissal of conventional political norms reflect this Machiavellian principle. Consolidation of power. Once in office, Trump continued to employ tactics that Machiavelli would recognize. He prioritized loyalty, often rewarding allies and punishing dissenters. His administration saw frequent turnovers, ensuring that subordinates remained dependent and aligned with his vision. Moreover, Trump's use of executive orders and his approach to foreign policy, marked by unpredictability and assertiveness, demonstrated a preference for direct action over consensus building, aligning with Machiavelli's advice that a prince must be willing to act against traditional virtues when necessary. Once power is seized, the greater challenge begins: keeping it. For Machiavelli, the central dilemma of rulership is managing the delicate and often dangerous balance between being loved and being feared. He did not believe cruelty was inherently evil, nor that kindness was always a virtue. Instead, he asked a brutal but honest question: what works? In Donald Trump's case, the answer was clear: fear keeps order. Love, at best, is temporary, the cult of personality. From the earliest days of his presidency, Trump polarized the American public, and he didn't try to fix that. In fact, he amplified it. To be universally liked, a leader must be soft, compromising, deferential. Trump was none of those things. His unapologetic tone, refusal to backpedal, and willingness to offend created the conditions Machiavelli wrote about. A prince who is always trying to be loved will be destroyed. Trump didn't want mass love. He wanted tribal loyalty and oppositional fear. He knew love fades. But fear? That lingers. Loyalty through fear and favor. Machiavelli warned that princes must control the loyalty of their inner circle. Trump embodied this rule. White House staff operated under constant pressure, often unsure of their job security. Loyalty was rewarded handsomely. Disloyalty, punished quickly and publicly. Jeff Sessions, once a loyal ally, was dismissed and publicly scorned after recusing himself from the Russia investigation. John Bolton, national security advisor, was fired and later ridiculed as incompetent. Conversely, those who defended Trump to the end, like Stephen Miller or Rudy Giuliani, were elevated and protected, despite public backlash. These were not arbitrary decisions. They were deliberate moves to maintain dominance. Machiavelli wrote, "A wise prince ought to reward or punish with care, for these actions make or break loyalty." Trump made this play constantly, testing, reshuffling, keeping his circle fluid, but fearful. The media as a weapon. Trump's use of media, particularly Twitter, mirrored the kind of public engagement Machiavelli admired: direct, unfiltered, and bold. He bypassed traditional gatekeepers, choosing instead to speak directly to his base. Through fiery tweets and combative press conferences, Trump projected power. Even his critics, whether journalists, late-night hosts, or foreign leaders, could not avoid amplifying his voice. This isn't love. This is domination of attention. And attention is power. Machiavelli didn't have Twitter, but he did understand the theater of leadership. A prince must not only rule, he must be seen ruling. Trump's every move, even chaos, served this purpose. The fear of the other. One of Trump's most Machiavellian tactics was his consistent use of enemy creation. From immigrants and foreign nations to internal deep state actors, he manufactured oppositional forces, then positioned himself as the only one strong enough to stand between us and them. This strategy has Machiavelli written all over it. To protect the state, a prince must sometimes create enemies and then crush them to gain the people's loyalty. It worked. Not just once, but throughout his term. Fear over love, a calculated choice. While Trump maintained a loyal voter base, he rarely sought love from the general public. He never made peace with mainstream media. He didn't soften his rhetoric for independence. He thrived on conflict, drama, escalation. To many, this seemed irrational. To Machiavelli, it would seem brilliant. Men love at their own will, but fear at the will of the prince. Trump could not control how people loved him, but he could absolutely control how people feared him. And in doing so, he kept opponents off balance, allies obedient, and the public enthralled even when enraged. Short-term risk, long-term power. Machiavelli admitted that fear, if abused, could lead to hate, and that hate could destroy a ruler. But he added a caveat. If one cannot be both loved and feared, then it is much better to be feared. Trump took that gamble every day. He chose confrontation over unity, disruption over diplomacy, fear over affection. And while this alienated millions, it also cemented his legend in the minds of his followers. In Machiavellian terms, Trump succeeded because power is not measured in harmony. It's measured in dominance, control, and impact. Trump didn't govern by niceness, he governed by strategy. And in doing so, he prioritized loyalty over expertise, cultivated attention even when negative, created enemies to consolidate his base, sacrificed public favor for strategic control, rewarded devotion and punished dissent, chose fear, not as a flaw, but as a tool of precision. Whether you love him or loathe him, the result is clear. He remained the center of power, just as Machiavelli would have advised. In the modern age, politics is draped in the language of virtue. Leaders campaign on unity, compassion, integrity. They wear morality like a badge, publicly, performatively. But Machiavelli was never interested in what a leader says. He only cared about one thing: what works. And in this regard, Donald Trump embodied the Machiavellian archetype to near perfection. Not because he upheld moral standards, but because he revealed how hollow those standards often are. He didn't try to appear virtuous, he tried to win. And in doing so, he exposed the performance and weaponized it. The theater of morality. Machiavelli taught that a leader should appear moral, but not necessarily be moral. A prince must appear to be all mercy, all faith, all honesty, all humanity, all religion, but he must be able and know how to act otherwise. Trump understood this intuitively. While other politicians cloaked their decisions in empathy, he leaned into bluntness. While others gave poetic speeches about American ideals, he insulted opponents, attacked the media, and shattered decorum. To many, this was appalling. To Machiavelli, it would be seen as honest statecraft. Because the job of a prince isn't to be loved by the intellectual class. It's to secure power, achieve goals, and survive political warfare. Morality, in this framework, becomes a tool, not a rule. Strategic immorality. Let's look at examples where Trump openly defied moral norms and still gained power. The Grab Them scandal, 2016. Where most politicians would have been destroyed, Trump leaned in. He called it locker room talk. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He reframed it. Result? His poll numbers barely moved. Why? Because his supporters didn't demand virtue. They demanded force. Attacking war heroes, John McCain. Morally indefensible? Yes. Politically catastrophic? No. Trump's response: I like people who weren't captured. Crass, brutal, but powerful in signaling that he would not follow conventional moral scripts. The Muslim ban and border wall. He didn't try to soften the optics. He made morality the enemy. He made compassion sound weak. He drew a line between us and them. And it worked. Each of these moments offended the moral conscience of America's elite. But they solidified Trump's base because they framed him as real, unfiltered, fearless. And to many, that was more important than virtue. Machiavelli's rule of results. Machiavelli didn't dismiss morality altogether, but he put it in its place. A prince is praised for keeping his word, but if he benefits from breaking it, he should do so without hesitation. This is the essence of strategic governance: outcome over optics, results over righteousness. Trump followed this to the letter. NATO funding. He threatened allies, publicly embarrassed them, and got them to pay more. China trade war. While others tiptoed, he imposed tariffs, escalated tensions, and extracted deals. Abraham Accords. He brokered peace deals with nations others said couldn't be touched, all while being branded a warmonger. Each action broke some moral norm, but each produced material outcomes. And in the Machiavellian lens, that's what matters. Morality as a weakness in politics. Here's the uncomfortable truth Machiavelli exposed. If your enemy doesn't play by moral rules, and you do, you lose. Trump knew this. While his opponents moralized, he maneuvered. While they apologized, he attacked. While they played to win debates, he played to win the war. This is why so many traditional politicians collapsed in his presence. They came with talking points. He came with instinct and audacity. And to those watching, the contrast was clear. One side was trying to sound good. The other side was trying to win. And that decisiveness, even when morally crude, created a following that no speechwriter could engineer. What this teaches us: Trump didn't fake morality. He ignored it. And by doing so, he proved Machiavelli's thesis in real time, that the appearance of virtue is often more powerful than the substance of it, that people respond to dominance more than kindness. That strategy trumped sentiment in high-stakes power games. He reframed political immorality as strength. He reframed disregard as independence. He reframed cruelty as clarity. And many followed, not because they didn't see it, but because they saw that it worked. The takeaway: whether you admire Trump or despise him, his political career is a masterclass in Machiavellian realism. He didn't play the game morally. He played to win, and win he did. Not always at the ballot box, not always in court, but in the cultural imagination of millions. As a man who never asked permission, never apologized, and never let virtue stand in the way of victory. That is Machiavelli's prince in modern form. Power today is not just about military strength or legal authority. It's about narrative. The leader who controls the story controls the masses. Not through facts, not through reason, but through perception. Donald Trump didn't just understand this principle. He mastered it. He didn't win because he convinced the most people he was right. He won because he convinced them he was real. Because he dominated attention, twisted media into a spotlight, and rewrote the rules of how modern power is projected. Machiavelli predicted this. He who controls appearances controls men. And in the age of social media, cable news, and 24/7 information warfare, Trump didn't just control appearances, he became them. Media as a mirror and a weapon. For most political figures, media is a tool to manage. For Trump, it was a battlefield. He didn't try to please journalists. He used them. He knew that outrage, scandal, and unpredictability would keep him in headlines. So he turned every insult into an echo, every attack into amplification. When the media hated Trump, they didn't silence him. They made him omnipresent. And omnipresence is power. Machiavelli would have called it the illusion of inevitability. Make your face, your name, your voice so common that no one can imagine politics without you. That's what Trump did. Narrative through simplicity. While his opponents spoke in long policy proposals, Trump spoke in sound bites. 3 to 5 words, punchy, sticky, repeatable. Make America great again. Build the wall. Drain the swamp. Fake news. Witch hunt. Sleepy Joe. America first. These weren't just slogans, they were narrative anchors. Machiavelli said, "Men in general judge more by their eyes than by their hands." Which means, people don't remember what you do. They remember what you say and how it felt. Trump knew the value of emotional resonance over technical detail. And in a fragmented attention economy, he didn't try to educate. He branded. Creating the us versus them myth. Every great prince, Machiavelli said, needs to craft a mythology. Trump's was clear. He wasn't a politician. He was a warrior, fighting for the forgotten American, against corrupt elites, fake news media, globalists, and cultural decay. He created villains, CNN, Fauci, Antifa, China, Democrats, the deep state, and he positioned himself as the only man willing to fight them. This is straight from Machiavelli. A prince must stir up enmities against himself so that having crushed them, his reputation will rise. Trump's enemies made him bigger, and he knew it. He baited them, battled them, beat them at their own media game. He didn't run from conflict. He invited it because every fight fed his myth. Master of the spectacle, Machiavelli wrote that rulers should stage theater to project strength. Trump didn't just understand political theater. He built his campaign like a reality show. Rally stages designed like concert events. Chants, lock her up, build the wall. Iconic red hats, merchandise as movement. Camera framing that made crowds look endless. Tweets as direct lines to the crowd, skipping traditional filters. He turned policy into entertainment, and that made politics more accessible, more emotional. Even his gaffes became branding. Critics said he was unpresidential. He turned that into the point. I'm not like them. That's why I win. He didn't try to look perfect. He tried to look inevitable. Narrative as immunity, the ultimate power of narrative. Immunity from contradiction. Machiavelli noted that a prince should be able to lie when necessary, as long as the lie serves a larger function. Trump mastered this. When caught in contradiction, he didn't apologize. He doubled down. He moved faster than fact-checkers. He redefined the terms of the debate mid-interview. His followers didn't care if everything was factually correct. They cared that he spoke their language, their pain, their rebellion. He made emotion outweigh truth. That's narrative dominance. Why his critics failed. Critics tried to beat Trump with facts, with virtue, with policy arguments, with moral shaming. None of it stuck, because Trump never accepted their frame. He didn't fight on their terms. He rewrote the terms. Machiavelli warned, "A prince who relies solely on the love of his people will fall when fortune changes, but one who controls perception He rides through storms untouched. And while Trump did eventually lose re-election, his grip on the narrative never fully broke. Even after January 6th, even after impeachment, even after indictment. Because his followers weren't buying logic, they were bought into a myth, and myths outlast terms. Donald Trump's genius was not in policy. It was in narrative engineering. He made enemies that made him stronger. He branded opposition as corruption. He dominated media by giving them a villain they couldn't stop watching. He created a world with him at the center and cast everyone else as a character. He turned outrage into oxygen. He didn't wait for legacy media to approve of him. He absorbed their attacks and converted them into proof of persecution. That's narrative judo. That's Machiavellian performance. And love him or hate him, it worked. Every ruler faces a moment of reckoning, not just about what they've done, but about what remains once they're gone. Machiavelli understood this dilemma. He knew that even the strongest prince would one day lose power, and the true test was what survived him: a legacy or an empire. Donald Trump, whether he returns to office or not, has already reshaped American politics. The question now is, did he build something that will last? Or was his movement built too much on him, and not enough on permanence? Machiavelli's teachings can help us answer that. The empire versus the man. Trump's brand has outlived his presidency. Trumpism still dominates GOP discourse. Candidates echo his tone. Voters invoke his name like scripture. But that is both his power and his risk. Because Machiavelli warned, "He who builds only around his person is vulnerable. He who builds institutions, ideas, and heirs bios becomes immortal." Trump did not install a clear successor. He did not institutionalize his ideology in stable, lasting frameworks. Instead, he built an empire of personality, of reaction, of charisma. Powerful, yes, but fragile when the man is no longer there to animate it. The Machiavellian blueprint for immortality. If Machiavelli could advise Trump today, his message would be this: you have shown mastery of acquiring and maintaining power, but to become a historical force, you must now transcend yourself. How? By creating ideological structures that outlast election cycles. By mentoring successors who can inherit your base. By shifting from emotional dominance to institutional legacy. If Trump returns to power and rules with discipline, clarity, and structure, he could seal his place not just as a disruptor, but as a founder of a new era. But if he returns with only vengeance and spectacle, he risks burning down the very empire he built. Legacy in the eyes of Machiavelli. What does a Machiavellian legacy look like? It's not about kindness, not about affection. It's about impact, longevity, the ability to define a generation, even after death. Alexander, Augustus, Napoleon, all had flaws, but all transcended the moment. Trump too has the stage, but will he use it to build or relive his past glories? The window is closing, and history is watching. Trump was never conventional, never polite, never diplomatic. And for all those reasons why Machiavelli would have admired him. Because Machiavelli didn't care about manners. He cared about results. Trump broke rules, challenged empires, commanded narrative, shaped minds. He became the living embodiment of the prince. Unpredictable, divisive, but effective. He made power visible. He forced the world to look. He didn't ask to be loved, because he preferred to be remembered. And that is exactly what Machiavelli warned us about, and what he secretly hoped a future ruler would become. If this video gave you a new lens to understand power, not just in Trump but in yourself, then don't let the learning stop here. Like this video to signal that this kind of analysis matters. Share it with someone who still thinks politics is just about policies. Subscribe if you're ready to see the world through a sharper lens, through strategy, power, history, and the truth no one else will say out loud. Because in this age of softness and spectacle, you need to understand what actually moves the world. That's what we study here, that's what we teach, and if you've made it this far, you're one of us now. Welcome.